The Starling cut through the dust lanes of the Perseus arm, its hull humming with a quiet energy that had not been there before. Mara stood at the helm, one hand resting on the console, the other holding a steaming mug of coffee. She watched the star field blur into streaks as the ship rode the edge of a gravity wave. Lyra sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, her eyes closed, her silver markings pulsing gently in time with the ship's rhythm. They had been running for 3 weeks, not from enemies, but from rumors, whispers on the comms channels about a hidden station deep in the dead zone, a place where lost things were found. Mara had heard the stories before, ghost stations that appeared only when the cosmic tides shifted, places built by ancient hands and forgotten by time. But this time the whispers mentioned something new. A signal not human, not Draken, not any known species. A pulse that matched Lyra's biorhythm exactly. Lyra had not spoken of it, but Mara saw the way her fingers trembled when the signal played through the speakers, soft and steady like a heartbeat from the void. They followed it, past derelict freighters frozen in time, past asteroid fields that sang with strange harmonics until they reached a region where sensors failed and stars seemed to blink out one by one. The Starling slowed its lights, dimming as if holding its breath. Then they saw it, a station hung in the darkness, shaped like a spiral shell, its surface smooth and seamless. No doors, no windows, just endless curves that caught the faint light and bent it into rainbows. Lyra stood slowly, her violet eyes wide. "It is Vayari," she whispered. Mara frowned. "I thought your people were gone." "We are," she said. "But this station, it is a seed vault, a place where we stored knowledge, not just data, but living memory." The Starling drifted closer and the station responded. A soft chime echoed through space, and a section of the hull unfolded like a blooming flower, revealing a docking bay warm with golden light. "You want to go in?" Mara askedly. Ra nodded, but her voice was tight with fear. "What if it remembers me? What if it does not?" Mara set the ship on auto hold and stood. "We go together." Inside, the air was warm and smelled of ozone and something sweet. Like blooming night flowers, the walls glowed with the same shifting symbols Mara had seen on Lyra's skin. They moved slowly, as if breathing corridors branched in every direction, but the floor beneath their feet pulsed with a gentle light guiding them forward. They reached a central chamber, vast and open, with a single pedestal in the middle. Floating above it was a sphere of liquid light, swirling with colors that had no name. Lyra approached it slowly, her hands outstretched the moment her fingers touched the sphere. The light surged upward, wrapping around her arms, her chest, her face. She gasped, not in pain but in recognition. Memories flooded her. Not just her own, but those of her ancestors. Thousands of lives, thousands of voices, all speaking at once. Mara watched helpless as Lyra's body stiffened, her markings blazing white, her eyes rolling back. Then she collapsed. Mara caught her before she hit the floor. Lyra's breath came fast, shallow, her skin hot to the touch. Mara carried her back to the Starling and laid her in the medbay. The ship's systems automatically adjusted the temperature and oxygen levels, as if it too was worried. For 2 days Lyra did not wake on the third morning. She opened her eyes and sat up abruptly, her voice low, urgent. "They are coming. Who? The ones who burned our world. They followed the signal." "They always follow the signal." Mara's blood ran cold. "How long? Hours, maybe less." She rushed to the bridge and powered up the engines, but the Starling would not respond. The controls were dead. The lights flickered, then went out. Only the emergency strips remained, glowing redly. Ra appeared in the doorway, her face pale but calm. "The station has locked us. It thinks we are a threat." "Why? Because I am changed," she said. "The memories it gave me, they are too much. It sees me as unstable." Mara cursed under her breath. "Then what do we do?" Lyra looked at her, then at the dark console, a slow understanding dawning in her eyes. "The ship listens to you, Mara. It always has. You are its captain, not just its pilot." Mara frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means you must speak to it. Not with words, but with will." Mara took a deep breath and placed her hands on the cold metal of the console. She closed her eyes and thought, not of commands, but of need, of fear, of the bond she had built with this old freighter over years of silence and survival. She thought of Lyra, of the quiet strength in her voice, of the way she hummed to the engine when it sputtered. The lights flickered. Back on, the engines rumbled to life. The docking clamps released with a hiss. They were free. But not for long. As the Starling pulled away from the station, a fleet emerged from the distortion field. 5 ships, black and jagged, their hulls lined with red, veins that pulsed like living things. The Draken had returned. But this was no ordinary raiding party. This was a hunter fleet led by the High Warden Kor himself, a legend among slavers, said to have captured 100 rare species and broken them. Alice's voice boomed through the comms. Mara Ellis, you harbor a relic of a dead race. Surrender her, and your death will be quick. Mara opened a channel, her voice steady. I don't take orders from butchers. Kor laughed, a dry sound like bones breaking. So be it. The fleet moved as one, surrounding the Starling, cutting off every escape vector. Lyra stood beside Mara. Her hands clenched. We cannot outrun them. Then we don't run, Mara said. She powered the thrusters and aimed the ship not away but straight at the station. What are you doing? Lyra cried. Trusting you, Mara said. If that place holds your people's memory, then it holds their strength too. They slammed into the station's outer shell, not with force, but with purpose. The Starling's hull groaned, but held, and as it touched the surface, the station reacted. The golden light flared outward, engulfing the ship. The Draken ships fired, but their weapons passed through the light as if it were smoke. Inside the Starling, every system overloaded, then rebooted. The console lit up with Vayari script. The engine sang a new song, faster, deeper, more alive than before. Lyra placed her hands on the wall and spoke a single word in her native tongue. Awaken. The station rose, not just a building, but a vessel, ancient and immense, its spiral form unfolding into wings of light. It moved with impossible grace surrounding the Draken fleet, not with weapons, but with presence. The red veins on their hulls dimmed. Their engines stuttered. Their crews screamed as their own ships turned against them, locking them in place. Kor's voice crackled one last time. What are you? Lyra answered, not with anger but with sorrow. We are what you tried to erase. The station released a pulse, silent and invisible, but the Draken ships went dark one by one. Their systems erased, their memories wiped clean, not destroyed but reset, as if they had never been used for evil. Kor's flagship drifted powerless, its crew confused children in adult bodies. Mara stared at the sight before her. Awe and fear tangled in her chest. Is it over? Lyra asked softly. For now, she said, the station will guard this place again, but it cannot stay awake long. It needs rest. What about us? Lyra looked at her, then at the Starling, the ship that had carried them through fire and silence. You have given me more than safety, Mara. You have given me purpose again. Mara smiled faintly. So what now? Now we fly, she said. But not as fugitives. Not as cargo haulers. We carry something more precious than freight. What's that? Hope they left the dead zone behind the station, fading back into the shadows as if it had never been. The Starling sailed on its hull, now etched with faint silver lines that matched Lyra's markings. A bond made real. Weeks later, they reached a small colony on the edge of Federation space, a place called Haven Moon, a refuge for those who had nowhere else to go. Mara had heard of it, but never visited. Too far off the grid, too quiet for her old life. But now it felt right, eh? Landed in the dusty port, the air thin but breathable, the people wary but kind. Lyra stayed close to Mara, not hiding but not drawing attention either. Her markings dimmed to a soft gray, blending with her skin. They were offered a small workshop near the market, a place to repair ships and trade parts. Mara agreed, but only if they could keep the Starling nearby. The locals nodded. No one questioned a captain's bond with her. Ship days turned into weeks. Mara fixed engines and rewired comms units. Lyra worked beside her, not as an alien but as a partner. She learned to drink tea. She laughed at human jokes. She even started wearing a simple blue tunic that matched her eyes. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the dunes, a young girl approached the workshop. Shy and wide-eyed, she held out a broken toy, a small robot with one arm missing. Can you fix it? She askedly. Knelt took it gently, her fingers tracing the damage. The girl gasped as the silver markings on Lyra's skin glowed faintly, and the robot's eye flickered back to life. How did you do that? The girl whispered. Lyra smiled. It was listening. The girl ran off shouting to her friends, and soon others came, not with fear, but with curiosity. Broken tools, damaged drones, even a sick pet bird with a flickering biolight. Lyra helped them all, not with magic, but with understanding. Mara watched from the doorway. Her heart full. They thought he was taming a predator. He was just feeding his pet. But they were wrong again. Lyra was never a beast to be controlled, and Mara was never just a loner with a freighter. Together they had built something rare in a galaxy full of greed and fear. A home, and in the quiet hum of the workshop under the light of 2 moons, the Starling rested nearby, its engines cool but ready, its heart beating in time with theirs the end. Rain fell softly over the valley. Not the sharp stinging kind, but a gentle hush that made the silver leaves shimmer and the river hum with deeper tones. Mara stood under the porch roof, her arms crossed, watching Lyra walk barefoot through the garden, her white hair damp, her silver markings glowing faintly in response to the moisture in the air. It had been nearly a year since the fall of the Draken fortress, and the valley had grown not just in size but in spirit. New shelters dotted the hills, built by hands that had once known only war or silence. Elena tended her plot of earth where human flowers bloomed beside Veyari vines and children of many kinds played near the river. Their laughter mixing with the chime of the trees, peace had taken root. But Mara felt it, the quiet tension beneath the calm, like a wire pulled too tight. She had seen it before in ports and alleys, in the eyes of people who smiled too wide while hiding knives. Then the message came, not through comms, not through ships, but through the tree. One morning its leaves turned dull. Its light dimmed and a single branch snapped without wind, falling at Lyra's feet. She picked it up and closed her eyes, her breath catching. "What is it?" Mara asked, already knowing. "They are coming," she whispered. Not hunters, not slavers, not even the silent ones who then, the lost ones. Mara had never heard that name. They were Veyari. Once, she said, but they chose a different path. When our world burned, some fled into the void, not to survive, but to forget. They erased their memories, their songs, their names. They became hollow shells that drift between stars, feeding on the echoes of others. Why now? Because the Ark's song grew strong enough to wake them. That night the sky darkened, not with clouds but with absence, stars winking out one by one as if swallowed whole. The air grew cold. The river stilled, the birds hid. "They are here," Lyra said, standing at the ridge, her arms wrapped around herself. "How many? I do not know." Mara looked at the valley, the homes, the garden, the children sleeping soundly. She turned to Elena, who had joined them, her face grim. "We cannot fight them like we fought the Draken," Mara said. "They are not evil, just empty." "Then we fill them," Elena replied, how with memory. Lyra turned her violet eyes wide with sudden understanding. "The tree," she said, "it holds the first song, the one from the Ark. If we share it not as a weapon but as a gift, they might remember who they were. It was a risk. If the lost ones rejected the song, they could tear the valley apart in their hunger. But if they accepted it, they might find their way back." "We try," Mara said. They gathered everyone in the central clearing, the tree at its heart, its branches drooping as if weary. Lyra stepped forward and placed both hands on its trunk. She closed her eyes and began to hum the same melody from the Ark. Soft at first, then stronger. The tree responded, its light returning brighter than ever, pulsing outward in waves. The stars above flickered. Then one by one figures appeared at the edge of the forest, tall and thin, their skin gray, their eyes dark voids. They moved without sound, drawn by the song. The children clung to their parents, but no one ran. Lyra kept singing. A single lost one stepped forward, its hands trembling. It reached toward the light but pulled back as if burned. "You are afraid," Lyra said softly. The figure made no sound, but tears fell from its empty eyes. Mara walked forward slowly. She stopped a few paces away and held out her hand, not to touch but to offer. "You do not have to be alone," she said. The lost one looked at her, then at the tree, then at Lyra. It took a step closer, then another. When its fingers finally touched the trunk of the tree, the light surged, wrapping around it like an embrace. The gray skin softened, the dark eyes filled with color and memory. The figure gasped as if breathing for the first time. "I remember," it whispered. "My name was Kalone by one." The others followed. Some weeping, some silent, all changed the valleys. Song grew richer, deeper, filled with voices that had been lost for generations. By dawn, the stars returned. The lost ones did not leave. They stayed, helping build new shelters, tending the garden, teaching the children songs in a language older than time. Life changed again, not with fear but with healing. Weeks passed in quiet rhythm until the day the Wanderer's sensors pinged a ship approached, not hostile, not cloaked, just alone. It landed at the edge of the valley and a woman stepped out, young, with dark skin and eyes that held too much pain. She walked slowly toward the central clearing, her hands empty, her head bowed. Lyra met her halfway. "You are Vayari?" The young woman whispered. "I am Lyra." The woman fell to her knees. "I am the last from the outer colonies. They took everyone, but I hid. I ran. I have been searching for years for a sign that we were not all gone." Lyra helped her up and led her to the tree place. "Your hand on it," she said. The young woman did, and the tree glowed warmly. Her tears fell onto the soil, and the ground beneath her feet sprouted tiny silver buds. Her name was Nia, and she stayed. She learned quickly, her hands skilled with both tech and soil. She helped Elena expand the garden and taught the children how to listen to the wind for warnings of storms. Mara watched them all from the porch, sometimes smiling, sometimes just breathing. One evening as the twin moons rose, Nia approached her. "Captain," she said softly, "I heard stories about you, how you saved Lyra, how you stood against slavers in silence." Mara shook her head. "I did not save her. She saved me." Nia nodded, then after a pause, "The Federation is looking for you. They say you are heroes." Mara snorted. "We are not heroes, just tired people who got lucky." "Maybe," she said, "but others need that luck." Mara looked at the valley, the lights from the shelters, the laughter from the river, the tree standing tall, its leaves chiming in the breeze. "We are home," she said. "Home is not a place." Nia replied, "It is what you protect." Mara was silent for a long time. Then she nodded. The next morning they held a meeting under the tree, all of them. Humans, Vayari, lost ones, children, elders even. The starling seemed to listen. Its ramp lowered like an ear turned toward the ground. "We cannot hide forever," Lyra said. "The galaxy is waking up to what was lost. We can help guide it." "How?" Elena asked. "By sharing, not taking, by listening, not commanding." Mara stood. "We keep the valley safe, but we also reach out, not with ships or weapons but with open hands." They agreed. Plans formed slowly, a network of safe ports, a school where old songs and new sciences were taught, a ship that would carry seeds and stories to worlds that had forgotten how to hope. The Starling would lead it, not as a freighter, not as a warship, but as a bridge. Preparations began, the ship's hold filled not with cargo but with saplings from the tree, with data crystals holding songs and histories, with supplies for those in need. The day they left, the valley was quiet, the trees' leaves glowing brighter than ever, as if in blessing. Nia stood beside Lyra, her eyes no longer empty but full of purpose. Elena hugged Mara tightly. "Bring them back safe," she said. "I will," Mara replied. They boarded the Starling, its engines humming with anticipation as they lifted off. Mara looked down at the valley, now more than a refuge, more than a home. It was a promise. They flew into the stars, not to conquer, not to hide, but to connect. Weeks later they reached their first stop, a dusty colony on the edge of known space, its people wary, hungry for more than food, for hope. They landed and opened the ramp. Lyra stepped out first, holding a small sapling in her hands. "We bring a song," she said. The people gathered slowly. Then one by one they reached out, not for the sapling but for her hand. Mara watched from the ramp, her heart full. They thought he was taming a predator. He was just feeding his pet. But they were wrong again. Lyra was never a beast to be owned, and Mara was never just a captain. With a ship together they had become something the galaxy had almost forgotten, a beginning. And as the first notes of the Vayari song rose over the dusty plains, the stars above seemed to lean closer to listen. The end. In the quiet hum of deep space, the freighter Starling drifted along its lonely route, far from the busy trade lanes. Its hull patched in places with mismatched metal, and its engines groaning like an old man's bones inside the dimly lit bridge. Captain Mara Ellis sat alone, her boots propped on the console, her eyes fixed on the endless black outside. She was tired not just from the long haul but from years of hauling cargo through empty sectors with no one to talk to, but the ship's broken voice system that kept calling her ma'am even though she'd told it 100 times to stop. The Starling was old but reliable, and Mara knew every creak, every flicker of its lights like the lines on her own face she had taken this run, because it paid well enough to fix the oxygen scrubbers and maybe buy a real meal instead of nutrient paste for once the cargo manifest listed only mining equipment. But Mara had learned long ago that what was written on paper rarely matched what was in the hold. Still, she didn't care as long as the credits cleared. Then the distress signal came. It crackled through the comms, weak and distorted, barely more than static, but Mara recognized the pattern. It was a human emergency beacon, old model, military grade. She frowned. No military ship should be out here this deep in the Orion fringe, and if it was, it meant trouble. She debated ignoring it, turning off the receiver and pretending she never heard it. She had done that before. Survival taught you to mind your own business in space, but something in the tone of the signal, a faint voice whispering, "Help, please," made her sigh and reroute the ship. 3 hours later, she found it. A small scout vessel half buried in the icy crust of a nameless moon, its hull torn open like a gutted fish. Smoke still curling from its engines, the beacon blinked red from a shattered antenna. Mara suited up and stepped onto the frozen surface. The cold biting through her gloves, she moved carefully, scanning for signs of life. Inside the wreck, it was worse than she expected. Frozen bodies strapped into seats, their faces locked in silent screams. The ship had been attacked not by pirates but by something precise, surgical. Every system fried, every weapon melted from the inside out, and in the rear compartment, tucked behind a sealed bulkhead, she found Hera Woman, alive, barely curled in a survival pod. Her skin pale blue with faint silver markings that shimmered like frost, her hair long and white as snow, her eyes closed but her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Mara checked her vitals with a handheld scanner. The device beeped in confusion. It couldn't identify her species, but it confirmed she was breathing, and her heart was beating. Slow but steady, Mara didn't hesitate. She carried her back to the Starling, wrapped in thermal blankets, and laid her in the medbay. The only real bed on the ship. She hooked her to the basic life support unit and waited. Hours passed. Then the woman opened her eyes. They were violet, not human at all. Deep and bright like twin galaxies swirling with stars. She looked at Mara without fear, without anger, just quiet observation. Then she spoke, her voice soft, melodic, like wind through glass chimes. "Thank you." Mara blinked. "You speak English?" The woman nodded slowly. "I learned it from old broadcasts from your world," she said. "Your music, your stories." They reached far. Mara sat back, surprised. Most aliens either didn't care about human culture or mocked it as primitive. "What happened to your ship?" The woman's expression darkened. "Hunters," she whispered. "They track my kind across the stars. We are rare. They want us for display, for study, for sport." Mara frowned. "Who are you?" "My name is Lyra." She said, "I am." The last of the Veeri. Mara had never heard of them, but she didn't ask more. She saw the pain in Lyra's eyes and knew some wounds ran too deep for questions. Over the next few days, Lyra grew stronger. She moved slowly at first, then with more grace, her silver markings glowing faintly when she was emotional or tired. Mara learned that Lyra didn't eat food. She absorbed energy from light. So Mara rigged a lamp with full-spectrum bulbs in the corner of the cabin. Lyra would sit beneath it for hours. Her eyes closed, her hands resting on her knees like she was praying. She helped around the ship too, fixing the comms array with tools Mara didn't recognize, and calming the ship's temperamental AI with a soft hum that made the lights flicker. In response, Mara watched her in awe. This alien woman moved through the Starling like she belonged there, like the ship itself welcomed her. But trouble followed on the 5th day. The sensors pinged a ship dropped out of warp. Sleek, black, and silent. No transponder, no identification, just a shadow against the stars. Mara's stomach dropped. She knew that shape. She'd seen it before in old war logs. The Draken Raiders, ruthless slavers, who hunted rare species across the galaxy and sold them to collectors in the outer systems. They had found Lyra. Mara's hands tightened on the controls. "We can run," she said. Lyra shook her head. "They will chase us until our fuel runs out or our hull breaks. They do not tire. Then what do we do? Lyra looked at. Her violet eyes steady. We fight. Mara laughed bitterly. With what this freighter has, one laser turret and a cargo net. Lyra stepped closer. Place your hand on the console, she said. Why trust me? Mara hesitated, then did as she was told. The moment her palm touched the metal, Lyra placed her own hand over it and closed her eyes. The silver markings on her arms flared bright white. A hum filled the cabin, low and powerful. The Starling's lights surged. The engines roared to life without command. The navigation screen filled with symbols Mara didn't recognize but somehow understood. The ship was waking up. It had been dormant for years, running on basic protocols, but now it responded to Lyra's touch like it remembered her kind. The Draken ship sent a message: surrender the Vayari or be destroyed. Mara opened a channel, her voice steady. This is Captain Mara Ellis of the freighter Starling. We carry no fugitives. You are trespassing in neutral space. Lie the Draken commander. His voice cold. We have her biosignature. She is there. Hand her over or we burn your ship from the inside. Lyra stepped forward and spoke in a language that sounded like stars singing. The Draken ship went silent for a moment. Then its weapons powered down. What did you do? Mara asked. Lyra smiled faintly. Their ship is old. It was built using stolen Vayari core technology. It still listens to my voice. The Draken vessel turned and vanished into warp without another word. Mara exhaled slowly. You could have done that, anytime. I needed your trust first. Lyra said. The ship would not respond if you had not allowed me to touch it. Your will matters as much as mine. Mara looked at her then, at the quiet bridge, the Starling humming softly like a contented cat. So, what now? She asked. Lyra walked to the viewport and gazed at the stars. I have no home to return to. My people are gone. My world is ash. Mara thought for a long moment, then nodded. Then stay. Lyra turned, her violet eyes wide with surprise. You saved my life, Mara said simply. Now it's my turn to return the favor. Besides, this old bucket could use someone who speaks Star. Lyra's markings glowed softly with warmth in the weeks that followed. The Starling changed, no longer just a freighter. It became something more, a vessel with purpose. The crew of two human and alien moved through its corridors with quiet understanding. Mara taught Lyra how to brew real coffee. Lyra showed Mara how to read the whispers of deep space, the subtle shifts in cosmic radiation that warned of storms or hidden ships. They took jobs together. Small runs mostly, but now they asked questions about the cargo. They refused shipments tied to slavers or war profiteers. Word spread that the Starling wasn't just another hauler, it was a ship with a conscience. Some called them fools. Others called them heroes, but Mara didn't care. She finally had someone to share the silence with. One night, as they drifted near a nebula, its colors painting the cabin in soft purples and blues, Lyra sat beside Mara on the bridge. You never asked why they hunt my kind, Lyra said softly. Mara sipped her coffee. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. Lyra looked down at her hands. The Vayari could speak to machines, not just control them, but understand them, feel their pain, their joy. Our minds resonate with the fabric of technology we made. The first star drives, we shared them freely and they took everything. Mara reached over and placed a hand on hers. Then they're fools, Lyra smiled, a real smile this time. They thought he was taming a predator. He was just feeding his pet, but they were wrong again. Lyra was never prey, and Mara was never just a freighter captain. Together they were something new, something the galaxy had forgotten. How to be kind. The Starling sailed on, its lights bright against the dark, carrying two souls who had found each other in the wreckage of broken worlds and chosen to build something better. And in the quiet hum of the engine room, the ship itself seemed to sing a soft song of hope only they could hear. Morning light spilled over the valley, soft and golden, the air cool with the scent of blooming silver ferns. Mara sat on the porch of their shelter, her boots off, her feet tucked beneath her as she sipped bitter root tea from a chipped mug. Lyra was already in the field, kneeling beside the young Vayari tree, its leaves shimmering in response to her touch. The tree had grown 3 feet in just 2 weeks, its roots spreading through the soil like veins of light, feeding not just on water and sun but on memory, on song, on the quiet hope that had carried them across the stars. Life on the new world had settled into a rhythm, simple but full. They woke with the twin suns worked. The small garden repaired what needed fixing and listened to. The planet breathed at night. It sang not with words but with pulses in the earth, with chimes in the wind, with the soft glow of the river that ran past their home. But peace never lasts. On the 27th day the sky changed, not with storm clouds or fire but with silence. The birds stopped singing. The wind stilled, the river dimmed as if holding its breath. Lyra stood abruptly, her markings flaring white. "They are here," she said. Mara set down her mug. "Who the ones who do not belong?" They walked to the ridge overlooking the valley below. The starling sat quiet, its hull dark but alert. And beyond it, at the edge of the forest, stood figures tall and thin, their bodies wrapped in gray cloaks that seemed to drink the light around them. They carried no weapons, no ships, no tech, just presence heavy and cold. "The silent ones," Mara whispered. "They have found the Ark's echo." Lyra said, "They will not leave until they take it." "Can they? Only if I give it." Mara looked at her, then at the valley, the garden, the tree, the home they had built in such a short time. She knew what Lyra was thinking. "No," she said. Lyra turned, her violet eyes filled with sorrow. "I cannot let them destroy this place to get to Methan. We show them they do not need to take anything." "How?" "By inviting them in." Lyra stared at her. "You would trust them." "I trust you," Mara said, "and if you say this world is safe, then it is." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. They walked down the slope together. The silent ones did not move as they approached. When they were 10 paces away, the lead figure lowered its hood, revealing a face smooth and ageless with eyes like polished stone. "You carry the last seed." The figure said, its voice like dry leaves scraping stone. "I do," Lyra replied. "You know we cannot allow it to grow unchecked." "Why not?" Mara asked, stepping forward. "Because it is alive, because it remembers, because it dares to hope." The figure turned its stone eyes to her. "You are human. You do not understand the weight of what she holds." "I understand enough," she said. "It is not yours to control." Ripple passed through the cloaked figures, not anger but surprisingly, a step between them. "Place your hand on the earth," she said. "Feel it." The lead figure hesitated, then knelt and pressed a gloved hand to the soil. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the ground beneath its palm glowed faintly silver. The figure jerked back as if burned. "It recognized you." Lyra said, "The world knows you are not here to harm it." The figure stood slowly, its voice softer now. "This place should not exist. The Veyari were meant to fade." "So were we," Mara said, gesturing to herself. "Humans almost burned our own world to ash, but we learned, we changed. And this one gave us a second chance." The silent ones exchanged glances, a silent conversation, passing between them in gestures too small to read. Then the lead figure spoke again. "What do you ask of us?" "That you watch but do not interfere," Lyra said. "Let this world grow. Let it remember. Let it teach, and if it spreads, it will not." Lyra said, "Unless others are ready to listen." The figure was silent for a long time, then it bowed its head very slightly. "So be it, we will observe from afar, but know this. If the seed turns to shadow, we will return and unmake it all." "We understand," Lyra said. The silent ones turned and walked back into the forest, vanishing as quietly as they had come. The wind returned, the birds resumed their songs. The river brightened once more. Mara let out a breath she did not know she was holding. "That went better than I expected," Lyra smiled faintly. "They are not evil, just afraid of what? Of hope." Weeks passed in quiet, the valley thriving, the tree now tall enough to shade their shelter, its leaves chiming softly. Even when there was no wind, one evening as they sat by the fire, a new sound came, not from the planet but from the sky. A ship, not black, not cloaked, not hostile. It dropped from the clouds, slow and careful, its hull scarred but clean, its lights blinking in a familiar pattern. Mara stood squinting against the dusk. "That is a Federation scout, but why here?" They watched as the ship landed a safe distance from the Starling. The ramp lowered and a woman stepped out alone. Her uniform faded, her face lined with years, but her eyes sharp and kind. She raised her hands, palms. "Open, Captain Mara Ellis," she called. "I mean no harm." Mara exchanged a glance with Lyra, then walked forward. "Who are you?" Commander Elena Cruz, retired. She said, "I tracked the Starling's last known jump. I've been looking for you for a long time." "Why?" "Because you are not the only ones they took." Mara froze. Elena stepped closer, her voice low. The Draken raided more than just Veyri worlds, they hit human colonies, 2 small ones off the grid. No one missed them until it was too late. My daughter was on one of them. Mara's chest tightened. I am sorry. Elena nodded, but her eyes were on Lyra. She is the one they wanted. Most Lyra approached slowly. I did not know about your people. You could not have, Elena said. But maybe together we can stop them for good. How the Draken are building something new. A weapon powered by stolen biocores, Veyri. Human others, they call it the Silence Engine. It does not destroy. It erases memory, identity. Will it turns people into empty shells that obey? Mara felt cold where deep. In the Kyle Rift, a place no ship can reach unless it knows the way. Lyra's eyes darkened. I know the way. Elena looked at her, then at Mara. You would help. Mara thought of the valley, the tree, the quiet life they had just begun. She thought of the empty eyes of the Draken crews, the silent ones, warning. The weight of what they carried. Then she looked at Lyra and saw not fear, but resolve. We will help. Preparations began at once. Elena's ship. The Wanderer was small but fast. Its hold filled with supplies and old weapons she had gathered over years of searching. Lyra worked through the night, weaving strands of the Veyri tree's light into a device that hummed with protective energy. Mara checked the Starling systems one last time, the ship responding with a low purr of readiness. The morning they left the valley was still, the tree's leaves glowing brighter as if in farewell. You will come back, Lyra whispered to the earth. They boarded the ships and lifted off the twin suns, rising behind them. The journey to the Kyle Rift took 6 days through asteroid fields and ion storms. The Wanderer leading the way, its old engines straining but holding the Starling close behind its hull, now laced with living light that repelled debris and masked their signature. When they reached the rift, it was worse than Mara imagined. A tear in space itself, black and swirling with jagged lightning at its center, floated the Draken Fortress, a monstrous structure built from the bones of 100 stolen ships, its surface crawling with red veins that pulsed like a diseased heart. They are powering the engine, Elena said, her voice tight. How do we stop it? Lyra held up the light-woven device. It will not destroy the engine. It will awaken the cores inside. What does that mean? It means they will remember who they were. The plan was simple and dangerous. They would fly the Starling straight into the heart of the fortress while Elena created a diversion with the Wanderer drawing fire from the outer turrets. Lyra would plant the device at the core chamber and activate it. Mara would pilot them in and out in under 3 minutes. It was madness. But it was all they had. They launched. The Starling shot through the storm of fire, its shields flaring white with every hit. Mara's hand steady on the controls, her eyes locked on the fortress's central spire. Lyra sat beside her, her markings blazing with energy. Hold on, Mara said. They slammed through the outer hull, the ship groaning, but holding together they skidded to a stop in a wide chamber filled with rows of glowing pods, each one holding a living being suspended in fluid, their eyes open but empty. The cores. Lyra ran to the center of the room and placed the device on the floor. It sank into the metal and spread like liquid light, racing up the walls into the pods. The fortress shook, alarms blared. Not mechanical, but organic screams of pain and awakening. The pods cracked open. One by one, the beings inside stirred, their eyes clearing, their hands reaching out, not in anger, but in confusion and relief. The Draken guards rushed in, weapons raised, but froze as the beings they had enslaved turned to face them. Not with hate, but with sorrow. You took our names, the beings whispered together. You took our songs. The fortress began to collapse, its red veins turning silver, its black metal blooming with light. Get back to the ship, Mara yelled. They ran through crumbling corridors, the Starling waiting where they left it, its ramp open, its engines screaming for them. They boarded just as the fortress exploded, not in fire but in light. A wave of pure memory washing over the rift, erasing the Draken ships, not by force, but by truth, showing them what they had lost, what they had done. When the light faded, the rift was empty. Only the Starling and the Wanderer remained. Elena's voice crackled over comms. It is done. Mara slumped in the pilot seat, exhausted but smiling. They flew back to the valley in silence, the twin suns, welcoming them home, the tree taller now, its branches wide enough to shelter more than just 2 souls. Dust swirled through the narrow streets of Haven Moon. kicked up by the twin suns that baked the red clay buildings into silence. Mara wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, her fingers still smudged with engine grease. She leaned against the doorframe of the workshop, watching Lyra kneel in the courtyard, helping a boy reassemble a broken solar charger. The boy's eyes wide with wonder as Lyra's silver markings glowed faintly, guiding the tiny circuits back to life it had been. 6 months since they landed, and the colony had changed not much, but enough people no longer flinched. When Lyra walked by, some even left small gifts at their doorstep, fruit-woven bracelets, notes with shaky handwriting saying, "Thank you." Mara had almost forgotten what it felt like to belong. Then the message came. It arrived on an old data chip wrapped in cloth left at the workshop door. No name, no signature, just a symbol carved into the wood, a spiral with a broken line through it. Lyra went pale when she saw it. "What is it?" Mara asked, a warning she whispered. "It is the mark of the Silent Ones." Mara had never heard of them. They were not warriors, not slavers. They were watchers, scholars who recorded the fall of civilizations and never interfered. Until now, why would they contact us? Because they know what I carry. Lyra said, the memories from the station. They are not just history. They are a key to what? To the last sanctuary? Mara frowned. Another hidden place. Not a place, she said. A ship. A living ark built before our world burned. It holds the last seeds of Vayari life. Not just data, but living cells, songs, and crystal form. Light that remembers how to grow a world, and they want it. They fear I will use it wrong or that others will find it through. Mara crossed her arms. "So what do? We go," she said before someone else does. They packed light, left the workshop in the care of the boy who had fixed his first engine under Mara's watchful eye. The colony elders nodded in quiet understanding. They knew better than to ask questions when the stars called. The starling lifted off at dawn, its hull humming with anticipation. The moment they cleared the atmosphere, Lyra plugged a small crystal into the console, the same one she had taken from the station. The ship's systems responded instantly. Charts unfolded on the screen, not of known space but of folded dimensions, paths that bent around gravity wells and time itself. "We are not flying through space," Mara said slowly. "We are flying through memory," Lyra replied. The journey took days, the starling slipping between layers of reality, emerging in places where stars had no names, where nebulae pulsed with colors that hurt the eyes. They passed ruins of dead fleets frozen in time, their hulls overgrown with crystalline vines, and once they saw a planet made entirely of glass, its surface reflecting a sky that no longer existed. Then they found it, floating in a pocket of calm space, was a vessel unlike any Mara had seen. It was shaped like a seed, smooth and white with veins of gold running through its surface. No weapons, no engines, just a single opening at the front like a waiting mouth. "That is the Ark," Lyra said, her voice trembling. As they approached, the Ark did not respond, it simply waited. Lyra guided the starling into the docking bay. Inside, the air was still and warm, the walls breathing softly with a slow rhythm like a sleeping giant. They stepped out onto a platform that extended to meet them, the floor beneath their feet. "Warm like sunlit stone. This place is alive," Mara whispered. "It remembers us," Lyra said. They walked through corridors lined with pods, each one glowing with a soft inner light, some empty, some pulsing gently, with life inside. Mara saw shapes within, not quite plants, not quite animals, forms that shifted when she looked away and changed when she looked back. At the heart of the Ark, they found the Korea chamber filled with floating orbs, each one holding a memory, a song, a story, a piece of a world. That was gone. Lyra reached out and touched one the moment her fingers made contact. The room filled with light and sound. The voice of a child singing in a language older than star steers ran down Lyra's face. But then the Ark shuddered. A deep groan echoed through the walls. The lights flickered. "Red. Someone followed us," Mara said. Lyra's eyes widened. No one knew the path, unless the Silent Ones were watched. 2 alarms blared, not loud, but deep resonant tones that vibrated in the bones. The Ark's walls began to seal, the corridors closing like petals at dusk. "We have to move." Mara grabbed Lyra's arm, but Lyra pulled free. "I cannot leave it unprotected, then protect it from inside." Mara said, "Get in the starling." Now Lyra hesitated, then nodded. They ran back through the narrowing halls, the Starling waiting with its ramp-open engines already whining with power as they boarded the ark sealed itself completely. No trace of the entrance remained. Outside a ship appeared, not Draken, not human. It was smooth and black with no visible seams. No weapons, just a single red eye at its front that scanned the empty space where the ark had been. "Who are they?" Mara whispered. "The Silent Ones," Lyra said. "But they are not alone." The red eye pulsed and a voice filled the comms, not through speakers but directly in their minds. "You carry the last key, surrender it or be unmade." Mara's hands tightened on the controls. "What does that mean?" "It means they will erase us from time." Lyra said as if we never existed. "Not if we move first." Mara fired the thrusters and the Starling shot forward, not away but straight at the black ship. It should have been suicide. But the ark had changed them. The ship moved faster than physics allowed. It slipped through the enemies, scanned like a ghost. The black ship turned impossibly fast, but the Starling dove into a fold in space. A path only the ark's memory could show them. They emerged light years away in a storm of ionized gas. The black ship nowhere in sight. "For now," Lyra said. They drifted in the storm. The Starling's shields holding against the radiation. Mara looked at Lyra, who sat curled in the co-pilot seat, her arms wrapped around herself. "You okay?" Lyra nodded, but her eyes were distant. "I saw my mother in that memory. She was planting a tree on our homeworld the day before the fires came." Mara reached over and squeezed her hand. "We will find a place to plant it again. But where? Somewhere safe. Somewhere quietly." Ra looked at her then, at the storm outside. "Maybe. Not a planet," she said. "Maybe." "A ship." Mara smiled. "The Starling, it is already growing," she said. "Look." Mara pointed to the wall near the console. A small vine had sprouted from a seam in the metal, its leaves shimmering with the same silver as Lyra's markings. The ark had given them a gift, not just memories but life. They spent the next week calibrating the Starling's new systems. The ship now responded to thought as much as touch. Lyra could calm a power surge with a hum. Mara could reroute oxygen flow with a glance. The line between pilot and vessel blurred until they moved as one. Then the signal came. Not a distress call, not a warning, but a song. Faint at first, then stronger, a melody that matched the one from the ark's memory sphere. Lyra froze when she heard it. "It is real," she whispered. "What eyes, a world." They followed the song through 3 more folds in space, each jump straining the Starling's frame. But the ship held together, its hull now laced with living circuits that healed as they tore. Finally, they emerged above a planet blue and green with white clouds swirling over mountains and oceans. It looked so much like old Earth that Mara's breath caught. But it was not Earth. The atmosphere read clean. The biosign stable and the song came from. The surface strong and clear. They landed in a valley where silver trees grew tall, their leaves chiming in the wind. The air sweet with the scent of rain and soil. Lyra stepped out first, her bare feet touching the grass. She knelt and pressed her palm to the earth. "It knows me," she whispered. Mara joined her, the wind tugging at her hair. "Is this it?" Lyra looked up, tears in her violet eyes. "Yes." They spent days exploring the valley, finding streams that glowed at night, flowers that bloomed when sung, too, and creatures that watched them with curious eyes but never fear. The planet was waiting. Not wild, not tame, just ready. They decided to stay. Not forever, maybe, but long enough. They built a small shelter from fallen branches and salvaged plating from the Starling. The ship rested nearby, its ramp open like an invitation, its engines cool but its heart still beating in time with theirs. Replanted the first seed from the ark in the center of the valley, a tiny crystal that sank into the soil and sprouted within hours a tree with bark like polished obsidian and leaves that shimmered with starlight. Mara watched her work, her hands in the dirt, her silver markings glowing with every touch. "You happy?" she askedly. Ra looked at her, then at the sky, where 2 moons were beginning to rise. Yes. They sat together as night fell, the valley alive with soft light and quiet song. They thought he was taming a predator. He was just feeding his pet. But they were wrong again. Ra was never something to be owned, and Mara was never just passing through. They had found more than a refugee. They had found a beginning, and in the gentle hum of the new world the starling stood guard, its lights dim but watchful, a bridge between what was lost and what could be, the end.